here today. This afternoon's first presentation is driving employee participation in safety observations by the use of Fiori at SCE. We have two speakers, Doug Cioli from SCE, he's an IT compliance principal program manager, responsible for managing large projects, identifying business requirements, and developing business cases for internal clients within safety, security, and compliance. Then Ingo Wilde from SAP, principal consultant in the sustainability services area, focuses on architecture, design, and implementation of SAP's EH&S solutions. That's over 20 years successful go-lives. I also want to make a point that at the end of the presentation, please use the mobile app to submit your ratings and your comments. The speakers there's some potential rewards for speakers, but based on the ratings, so I encourage you to do that.
Thanks.
Thanks for the introduction.
All right, well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. So Ingo and I are really excited to share our recent implementation of the Fiori app, specifically designed to capture all of our behavioral-based safety observations in Southern California Edison. So this has been a very long journey for us at Southern California Edison within the EHS suite of products from SAP. I'll briefly walk you guys through a little bit of background on our projects, how we ended up to where we are here today in 2016, and then Ingo's going to go through some architectural background in terms of some lessons learned from the project, some of the technical aspects that we learned. This is actually one of the first Fiori apps. This and timesheets were just released 2 days ago internally within SCE, so we are at the forefront within the organization. So we're really excited, but there were also a lot of lessons learned that we took over the past couple months. So given that this is our first foray into Fiori, we'll share some lessons learned there. We'll then actually, fingers crossed, do a live demo of safety observations. That's always dangerous because anytime you try to do a live demo, things will go wrong. So we do have screenshots just in case it doesn't work, but fingers crossed it will go as planned. And then Ingo's going to wrap up with some lessons learned. So anything else you want to say before we get started?
No, thanks.
All right. So who are we? Southern California Edison is one of the largest public-owned utilities in the United States. We serve about 14 million residential customers. We have a 50,000 square mile territory across all of Southern California Edison. We have a very large asset base, and if you think about operating in the state of California with a large asset base, we have a lot of regulatory compliance needs, whether it's from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, CalOSHA, EPA, and that's all on the EHS side. We also have a whole slew of other regulatory needs, FERC, NERC, California Public Utilities Commission, and so forth, that we have to comply with on a daily basis. And so with all those assets come a whole slew of activities that we have to do in order for us to ensure that SCE remains in compliance. All right, so if I take us back to about 3 years ago, it was May of 2013 when we decided that we were going to embark on this journey called EHS Inc. And Don Neal, who's actually in the room, who's our Director of Environmental Services, came up with that name to synchronize EHS with the business. He had a whole slew of applications and processes that were kind of isolated. They didn't integrate with any of our other SAP systems and so forth. So we determined in 2013 that we were going to evaluate a number of EHS solutions, which included SAP. We looked at the SAP EHS solution back in 2009. It didn't quite meet our needs, and so at that point we bought the Enviance application. We signed a 5-year contract with the agreement that about a year before that contract expired that we would relook at the SAP solution to see if it got us closer to meeting our needs. We were pleasantly surprised with the improvements that SAP made, specifically with the EHSM 3.0 application that they released shortly before we did this evaluation. So from there, we had a set of business requirements that were provided to us, and we've kind of framed them in 4 different areas. First would be incident management. This would be the recording, investigation, and corrective actions that go along with all of our safety and environmental incidents across Southern California Edison. We also have environmental and safety compliance. This would be all of those various regulations that I was referring to, where we have thousands of requirements across all the various regulators that we have to comply with that lead to tens of thousands of manual activities on an annual basis. So all of those regulatory needs, all of our permits, all of our manual tracking, our manual tasking activities are all captured within the environmental compliance application so that Don and his team now have full end-to-end visibility of our safety and environmental performance at Southern California Edison. Environmental clearance, we use the MOC application, Management of Change. we have a unique requirement from our state of California that before any work is done by Southern California Edison out in the field, before we break ground, we have to get environmental review and approval. Whether it's replacing a pole or installing a brand new 10-mile transmission line. So in the environmental clearance work stream, we actually have our transmission and distribution planners input their project coordinates. If I have a single pole, they'll put the latitude and longitude in of that pole. We then take those coordinates, pass them over into GIS, and GIS has all of our environmental layers stored, but we'll do an evaluation to make sure it's not in an eagle zone. It's not, it's within our Edison territory. It's not within public lands and so forth. Depending on that evaluation results, we actually will allow about 60% of the time our team be folks to auto clear the project, and they can proceed without any human intervention whatsoever. This was really important for our EHS organization because we were projecting that we were going to have to hire about 25 people in order for us to keep up with the pace of change that was going on internally with our infrastructure replacement program. So in order for us to minimize that cost, we really wanted to drive some efficiency because 60% of the time, Don's team was reviewing these projects only to find out there was no environmental impact whatsoever. Why should we have them get involved with those items? Let's auto clear those and only have his team focus on those items that actually pose an environmental risk. And finally, hazardous waste management. This is cradle to grave life cycle tracking of all of our hazardous waste that we generate within Southern California Edison. So from incident management, let's say I identified that there was a transformer that was spilling oil. Car hit a pole, we captured that there was a hazardous material spill from incident management. We send off that oil for testing at our internal lab, and if we deem that there is a PCB concentration that exceeds a certain threshold, we'll actually have to treat that as hazardous waste. So we actually track from the carcass of that transformer out in the field to its shipment into the service center, ultimately onto the disposal truck, and then finally off the truck at the disposal facility. We now have end-to-end visibility of all the hazardous waste that we generate at Southern California Edison. And then through all of this, we have analytics and reporting that go along top, right? It's great for us to implement an operational and transactional system, but if Don and our management team doesn't have access to the data, they don't see it in a simplistic way that they can drive decisions, it's not really going to change our business in any tangible manner. And so this one took us a little longer than we were anticipating, but we've been making some good progress over the last 6 months or so. We've now been able to produce dashboards across each and every one of these that can show everything from our DART and OSHA rates in near real time to all of our clearance items that are taking place on a daily basis and all the hazardous waste that we're generating. So you can kind of see a lot of the things that I was just talking about. I won't read every single one of these, but we had, these were the high-level project goals that were given to me by the EHS organization. So when Don and his team came to us with these set of goals, we said, okay, we know that we have these goals, we've selected SAP, now how are we going to get this done? So from there, I already briefly talked about these 4 work streams, and this is where EHSA, that EHSM, MOC, and environmental clearance, environmental compliance were the 3 applications that we installed from an SAP perspective that served as the foundation of EHSA. Not only did this drive a lot of improvements from an environmental and safety perspective, it gave Don and his team a lot more visibility to the health of his organization, but we actually also reduced quite a bit of costs because we had a whole bunch of applications across the board where we had, let's say, 3 applications for recording injuries. That's duplicative in nature, where I had the same capability in multiple applications, and I was paying license fees for every single one of those. So we were actually able to really simplify our landscape from about 20 applications down to just SAP. Any questions before I move on? I just threw a whole bunch of information at you guys, so I think Ego and I like to make this more conversational in nature, so if at any point you guys have questions, feel free to stop us, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. All right. Sure.
What do they do with it?
Oh, man, I like to take the credit, but really, Don came to me, he said, this is what I need. I said, Ingo, I need help, I don't know how I respond to this, and Ingo told me what I can do, and then I communicated that back to Don. So I was really the middleman here. So Ingo's role in this entire initiative was he was really our project architect and our technical lead from SAP Professional Services. They were our system implementer throughout this entire implementation of the last 3 years or so, and he and his team have been vital to our success. All right, so here are 2 high-level guidelines, and this is what we continue to keep as a theme through not only those first few implementations of our first phase of incident management, but even into 2016 when we started going down into our Fiori for safety observations. First is to use standard functionality wherever possible. We've been in SAP shops since 2006, 2007 timeframe, and we've had some challenging implementations where our business wanted to take our processes and slime them into SAP, so that meant that we had to customize the heck out of the system. That causes a whole slew of problems. Not only does it lead to significant upfront investment, but it also makes upgrades and maintenance much more challenging. And so we wanted to take some lessons learned from those previous implementations and really focus on, SAP is a best-of-breed software. We're recording, let's say, injuries. It shouldn't be any different for recording an injury at Southern California Edison than it is at Eastman, right? An injury is an injury. So let's try to use out-of-the-box functionality wherever possible. And for the most part, we've kept true to that. The only time that we've deviated from that is where we have must-have requirements that may be unique to the state of California. So Cal OSHA mandates that there's certain things that we have to capture, for example, when we're reporting an injury. So we might have had to add probably 8 to 10 fields into the injury reporting process to make sure that when we submitted the OSHA logs at year-end that we had all the accurate information. We also wanted to make sure we had strong governance structure. And what I mean by that is we had to have a single process owner. I've been involved with way too many implementations where you have a five-headed monster trying to make a decision and nobody can come to agreement. What do? Well, then you end up having the same capability with 5 different processes because you want to try to keep everyone happy. That's not going to be cost effective at the end of the day. And so when we went through blueprinting for the first phase of incident management, Ingo was in the room and he was giving us demos of how he's seen this tool be successfully implemented at their clients. And he was really advising us in terms of what we should and should not be doing. And when we had a challenge to how the standard software was built, he would give us alternatives. He would say, you know what, I understand where you're coming from, here are some options, right? So we had a strong technical architect that had extensive experience, not only with the application itself, but he brought a lot of functional subject matter expertise to the table. We also had Don in the room during those 3 days of blueprinting. We also had transmission and distribution and customer service and power supply and all of our key stakeholders in the room. And they all had their own unique ways of doing things over the past 30 years. So when consensus couldn't be met in the room, we ultimately turned our heads and looked at Don and said, Don, we need a decision, and we need a decision today. Can't keep everyone happy, and he was willing to, ruffle some feathers if that's what it took, because he had to make a decision that was in the best interest of the company, knowing that people were going to have to change, right? And I think that was one of the biggest lessons learned for us, is when we started pitching the idea that we're going to go to an SAP solution for EHS, we were excited. I'm not sure everyone else from the business perspective was excited. SAP isn't really always known for usability. Trust us, this isn't a normal SAP application. Guide activity form that we use for reporting an injury is really intuitive, and it's going to be something that you can pick up really easy. Well, people were afraid that it was going to be very disruptive to the business, and trying to get them to understand that it wasn't going to be as disruptive as they thought it was going to be was something that we struggled with at the beginning. But as people started to jump on board, they started to use the application, a lot of that noise started to quiet down. So having that decision maker in the room and knowing that we were going to be using standard functionality as much as possible was really the key success factors for us throughout all 4 work streams of this implementation. So now we're going to focus specifically on incident management. I know that the meat of this presentation is going to be focused on safety observations on a Fiori app, but I want to give you some background. So the first phase of incident management, so Don came to me in May of 2013, thought for sure we'd get approvals and we'd be able to start the project in July of 2013, and Don wanted all 2014 incidents from an injury perspective recorded in the system to make OSHA reporting a lot more straightforward. Well, we had about 3 months of delays. So we started the project on October 7th of 2013. So we had our first steering committee, said, okay, well, we're 3 months delayed, so we're looking at a March of 2014 implementation. I said, nope, that's not happening. We're still going live January 1st. Okay, well, I guess we're going to have to get moving. And so I remember Ingo and I had this conversation, and we've had many experiences with SAP implementations, and we're like, yeah, that's not happening. But you know what? We had a direct commitment, and we did the best we could. And so the way we were able to do this, and we moved in our transports, I believe, on December 23rd, about 10 weeks after we kicked off blueprinting on October 7th. We were able to do that because of those 2 success factors that I just talked about, where we had out-of-the-box functionality, get it up and running, get it to the users as quickly as possible, and use a real agile type methodology of implement it, knowing that every month after that we're going to have additional improvements and enhancements and potentially more releases coming down the road. But we just want to get that foundation set so we can start to make improvements over time. So we started with injuries, close calls, and safety suggestions. We were live within 10 weeks. We were live with 15,000 employees because everyone has the ability to submit close calls and suggestions. 15,000 employees in 10 weeks without a single hour of training. It's pretty impressive, right? You know, we actually gave a button on the top of the guided activity form called Online Assist. It's context-sensitive help, so that when you're on step one and you're trying to report an injury and it has a field for did this or could this have resulted in a serious injury or fatality? Well, what's the definition of a serious injury or fatality? I can click on the button and it gives me text, audio, and a short video demonstration on exactly how to use that page. Then when I move to step two and I want to identify the injured party, click on the button again and it only gives you specific information to that specific step in the process. So most of the time, because it's so intuitive, people don't have to click on it, but in those very rare circumstances that they have some questions, they can click on that button, and very rarely do we get a call. Once that went in January of 2014, we made some additional break-fix items and some enhancements over the next 6 weeks or so. And then we started on the next phase of incident management, which was our environmental incidents. So that would be hazardous material spills, agency visits, and environmental events. Now I've taken everything out of compliance from an incident management perspective. I had it up and running in SAP by April of 2014, which gave us about 2 months to stabilize the environment before we actually terminated the advice contract and shut off the system. Again, people found it very easy and intuitive to use, even so that we then had probably one of our biggest challenges where our transmission and distribution folks said, great, you've now given us the ability to capture all of our injuries and close calls, but I have a whole slew of other incident types that I capture in my current system. I'm not turning it off until you guys give us those same capabilities. Okay, Ingo, how can we do this? Well, a lot of the things that they were doing were native out of the box. Capturing vehicle incidents, equipment failures. There were already pre-configured steps in the incident management process for us to link into EAM to identify the piece of equipment or the specific vehicle within EAM that had an incident. So we went through over the next 5 months or so and did equipment failures, vehicle incidents, switching events, and wiring events. Team E ultimately was able to turn off their application. They're using EHS Inc. or SAP EHSM as their single one-stop shop for all of their various incident types. So that was really the end of what we originally established for incident management. We had talked about doing safety observations up front, potentially as part of safety phase one. But we decided, we're not ready as a company. We still need to get people used to having the behavioral-based safety observation conversations before we even think about bringing automation. Because bringing automation isn't going to do anything if people don't know that they should be doing this or that they haven't been trained on how to have the right conversation. So after we started getting through the stability of the entire EHS Inc. program, we then rehashed the conversation of, how do we start to change the culture at Edison? We know that we're having the conversations, but we don't get a whole lot of visibility to the type of conversations that are taking place and what the root cause of these negative conversations may be, even maybe where people are having positive conversations. So we said, let's bring back the conversation of seeing if we can do safety observations. And let's also use it as an opportunity to bring the OSHA log functionality out of our current workers' compensation system into EHSM, where again, it's standard functionality. So in October of last year, we started going down this path, and this is where we are today, where as of Monday of this week, we have now launched our pilot for our Fiori app. And now anybody that has a behavior-based conversation out in the field can go ahead and record those safety observations on their mobile device. And there's no longer an excuse of, I had the conversation, but I forgot to fill out the card or drop it in the box. By the time I got back to my desk to be able to report it on the PDF form that's online, I didn't print it out and forgot that it took place. So we don't even capture those type of things. So we're really excited to see how we can roll this out and really get ourselves familiar not only with safety observations and increase there, but also to get our company more familiar with Fiori. And we have probably a backlog of about 100 applications in the Fiori space that we're really excited to roll out over the next 18 months, assuming these two pilots go well. So I had this slide for those EHS professionals in the room. This is really where we're going to focus on, right? You want to have as few, hopefully zero fatalities and serious injuries You might have a few more minor injuries and then what we call close calls or near misses, right? And ultimately, we should have behavioral-based conversations, right? That's how you start to change the culture. If you see somebody walking and texting, have a conversation, because you don't want that turning into a close call or, God forbid, an injury. And so we saw that we were really a pyramid, right? We had quite a few observations taking place, but we had probably the same number of close calls being reported as injuries. So how did we start to change the culture? Well, I would say EHSM was a big part in us changing this so that we become more of a pyramid. But I can't say that it's only attributed to the application. It's a combination of the ease of use of reporting. It's a combination of a lot of training and communications and strategic plans that our corporate safety organization has put forth. A combination of all those things together has really helped to start to change the culture at Edison. The communication is great, but if there wasn't an easy-to-use app or a way to report these things, it wasn't going to be successful, just like me implementing a system without the communications also wasn't going to work. So last, before I pass it over to Ingo, this is where we currently stood specifically on safety observations. We had, I count at least 6 different ways of recording a safety observation across our entire company today. In IT and across a lot of our corporate functions, we use the paper card.
Did you bring one of those?
I do, actually in my bag. Hopefully I never have to use one again, because now I have the Fiori app on my phone. But there was only so much we can do, because it wasn't worth us to then take those, read every single one of them, transcribe them into an application of some sort, and try to figure out what the trending and root cause was of each and every one of those. Right? So a lot of times what we did is corporate safety would count them, right? We know how many ITs submitted. We might look at them to see if it was a significant or serious event, in which case we follow up. But most of the time it was just to count, great, thank you for having that conversation. But there wasn't a whole lot of follow-up action on it. We also had various Word documents, PDFs, Excel files, online forms that all the different OUs had started to do, but there was no streamlined or consistent process, and it made reporting a big challenge. So now, as of Monday of this week, we have a single pane for all 15,000 employees in the company. And that's the Fiori app that is not only accessible on phones, but is also accessed on desktop. So it's a single user interface, device agnostic. No matter where you are, when you're having that conversation, get it in the system. Any questions before I pass it over to you?
On your training, but what were you using as the back end for all the content?
Yeah, it was basically an HTML page. We had created individual HTML pages so that if you're on step 1 of an injury, there was a corresponding step 1 for injury HTML file that was housed on an internal server, and we just had a linkage table. So if you're on this step of this incident type, that's the page you pull up. And we reached out to a company called Training Systems Design, and they have a lot of experience with this type of functionality. We saw a demo for what they had done with a few other organizations, very similar in nature. Afterwards, I can actually launch the system and show you. A lot of times we had problems with people trying to find the location for where an injury took place, right? We have over 1,000 facilities configured in our system in our 50,000 square mile service territory. So people had a challenge in terms of how do I find the right one, right? We frequently refer to our general office as the GO. So people could type in GO, nothing would come up because it's in the system as general office number 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we actually did a 20-second recording that we were able to embed within that HTML page that showed people how to actually navigate through the system, type in either through search functionality or actually through the location hierarchy to find where they want to go. Any other questions?
More questions?
Okay, Ingo.
Right. So one of the biggest takeaways for today that I want you to go home with is that it is quite simple to create a Fiori app. Doug and I, we were preparing for this conference and for another conference, and we were just talking to each other, and we realized how smoothly everything went and how quickly we got this Fiori app built for us. So that is one of the things that I want you to walk away with today. And so I want to walk you through the 5 steps that we went through. And those are not exactly the 5 steps, but on a high level, those are the things that are best practice that you need to do in order to get a Fiori app off the ground. So I'm going to step you through these steps. Step number 1. So Doug glanced a little bit over the project goals, but one of the goals was to integrate the application into the business process. So one of the first things we did is we sat down in a very painful exercise. John can maybe attest to that, and others who have gone through the process. So we designed a to-be process. What that did, it brought really the team together and created this one vision for the application. All the steps that you can see in blue are steps that are inside the system. And so one of these boxes is that Fiori app. And that was our starting point for the entire project. So we had two project streams going on at the same time. One where we built the back end, and the other one where we brought in the mobility team and built the Fiori app. Step number two, design the EHSM backend. So we took the standard form that is in SAP EHSM. Who of you doesn't know SAP EHSM? Please raise your hand. A few of you, okay. So EHSM stands for Environment, Health and Safety Management. It's a suite of solutions in the area of sustainability. One of them, we talk about incident management, and this is what the Fiori app is built on top of. So we took that standard form because one of our mantras was use as much standard as possible. And we enhanced the form a little bit. We added a few fields, a few sections, and we took another standard component from another module and plugged it into this form. And you can kind of see here, part of a safety observation is to answer a list of questions at Southern California Edison. And so we added sections, and in each of these sections there are questions underneath. And when we look at the live demo, we will see a little bit more about that. So step number three. So what you can see here. Can you guys see that? Not very well. But we took this one-page form and we transformed it into screen mockups for the mobile app. So I was very surprised and amazed when I saw this. I thought, okay, a little mobile app, there are a few mockups, but a relatively simple form translated into 60 different screens. So that's maybe one surprise that you have. Next slide. So the reason why we did this, we wanted to drive down the ambiguity that is there when you talk to your customer. The customer says one thing, you understand something, and you think a totally different thing. But the screen mockups brought us together, and we reduced this ambiguity and this gap between our understandings. So my recommendation in the lesson learned is to add as much detail as possible to the screens. And you can see we even mocked up some error behavior. But
I'll add briefly to that, Ingo. So I think pictures really speak more than 1,000 words when you're trying to communicate between an IT project team and the business. Because the business says X, Y, Z, IT interprets it as A, B, C, right? It's because not everything is as clean and clear cut as you would like it to be. And so that's when you can say, okay, you know what, before I start spending my time on development and coding and configuration, let me give you a screen mockup so I can make sure that you and I are speaking the same language. And I think we caught a lot of changes before we even started development, just by having this kind of a conversation. When we were talking about, okay, well, when you say that field needs to be mandatory and you can't move on before you complete all the mandatory fields, is this exactly what you meant? Is this the behavior that you were expecting? So it saved us a lot of time on development, right? We spent probably an additional week just going through this blueprinting type process, but it saved us probably months on development and having to rework code change after code change as people started testing.
And it took us about 3 to 4 months, I would say, from start to go live.
Yeah, it was about 3 months just on the Fiori, and I'd say the bigger challenges that we had, given that we were one of the first at Edison, was making sure that we had the underlying Fiori infrastructure available to us. Now that that's in place and we're able to go live, moving forward, I expect that any future Fiori implementation will be pretty quick.
Yes. And so, the screen mockups, that's one thing. But if you buy a new car, you can look at the car and it's great and you think that's my car, but the moment of truth comes when you sit in the car and drive it. So that's why we did one more step. Step number 4. we built the first prototype. And this was based on all the screenshots that you saw, the 60 screenshots. We dropped that into a tool called Envision, and we let the users interact with the tool. And then, they found more things, and they were able to add comments in this tool, and we went through multiple iterations until we got to a point when we were happy with the end result. And that's when we started coding, not before. So this is a big, busy screen here, but so I will spend a little bit more time on that. So the first step in step number 5, realization in SAP. So what does it mean? So we started on the left-hand side, all in blue is everything in ECC 6. Everybody knows what ECC 6 means? I see nodding. So that's the core SAP system. So we configured SAP HSM. That was step number 1 in this build step. Step number 2, we created so-called OData services. And if you want to take one thing away, just to remember this OData, that's the enabler to communicate with Gateway and the Fiori app. So we did this. And then we engaged the mobility team, and we hired the SAP custom development team, the CDP team, to help us with that. And actually, they also did the design. The 60 screens that you saw before, they brought in a UX designer who does this all the time. And he handed it over to the mobility team to put the Fiori app into the system.
Yeah, I think that was a smart move on our part by bringing in the CDP organization, because they have, as Ingo said, they've been doing Fiori app development for probably a year and a half, 2 years now. And so we had somebody that was able to bring those best practices to the table, not just to meet the specific needs on safety observations, but the usability aspect of a mobile app was something that we at Edison have never done. So we were really able to tap into their knowledge, to make sure that this was going to be a successful program. And so between the PSO organization, from Ingo's perspective of configuring EHSM, he knew what our business process was, and then handing that over to the CDP organization so that they can go ahead and build us an app that's going to be useful for us long term, made a lot of sense. And the other benefit of us using the CDP organization is we weren't paying for services necessarily, we were paying for us to then buy a license that was produced by the CDP organization. So anytime we have a break fix with this app, let's say we do an upgrade, or we realize as part of this pilot that something's not working as intended, that's covered as part of our normal maintenance agreement with SAP, and we can go through OSS notes in order to provide those fixes as quickly as possible.
And we did three very unique things in this project too that I want to briefly mention. One is we created a web application. It's a Fiori web application. It's not an application that you have to install. It's a URL that you can go to, and you can expose that to your company, or you can even expose it outside. So that's very cool. That's number 1. So we made it public. That was number 2. And number 3 is that the screens that you can see there are dynamic. So, for example, I talked about the questions. If you change a question, it will automatically change on this side when you change it here. So that's another very cool thing down the road. I think this will be very good for you. So with that dynamic comes also, and this is a lesson learned, interdependencies between the back end and the Fiori app that you have to take into consideration. Let's say that the mobility team wants to do a change, they need to talk to the back-end team to make them aware of it. Or if the back-end team makes a change, the mobility team needs to know about it. So there's a lot of communication that's necessary. And that's what I found so remarkable to talk about this project, is how we were able to build this one team, bring together all the different type of teams into one. So, would you agree that it sounds pretty straightforward and easy to do? Questions?
So, the realization phase, how many resources to build and how long?
How many resources to build the Fiori app? Okay. We had one architect, so we have one UX designer, one architect, and one developer. So a couple of resources.
And I think from the point that we completed those pre-coding steps of building, using Envision to go through mock-ups and make it interactive and receive feedback before we started coding, since we had the requirements 99% baseline at that point, I want to say we had the app actually built in the test environment within 2 to 3 weeks from the point that we baselined those requirements.
Yeah. And then we had another person, another resource working on this here, the OData services on that side. Somebody who understood the data model very well. Another question?
Users were working before with AHSA and then Fiori, or?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So
What was the question?
Yeah, so if you didn't hear it in the back, the question was whether users were using EHSM before they started using Fiori. So we launched for injuries, close calls, environmental incidents, and some of our operational incidents. We were using just EHSM starting back in January 2014 all the way up until late last year. But specific for safety observations, in December, we rolled out the EHSM guide activity form alone to a small set of users and had them validate that the functionality was working as possible. But knowing that the UI was going to change to Fiori within the next few months, we didn't want to go too far out with the EHSM guided activity form, simply because we didn't want to train or have the OCM activities focus on EHSM, knowing just a couple months later they were going to be focusing on Fiori. So just a small pilot group that was using them to validate that EHSM was configured and developed correctly, so that when we went into Fiori, any defects that were discovered in theory should be with the Fiori app itself and not back into the EHSM. So now I'm minimizing where I have to look when I'm doing an analysis of the breakthroughs.
Is the Envision a third-party application?
Yeah, Envision is like a software application. It's a third-party app, yeah.
Yeah, it was the first time I had seen it.
Yes.
What was the tool we used back?
We used,
There was another app. So there's similar products that were in place back in some of the previous iterations of incident management. Ego had done screen mockups and another tool as well, iRise.
iRise,
Application. They're very similar in nature, but I mean, if there was one lesson learned for this, it was, you know what, you can have all the blueprinting documents and functional design specs as you can possibly want, but until you actually get a screenshot of it, it's not really going to be true to our end user community. So, you know, spending those a few additional weeks up front by using iRise or Envision or any other of these tools to make sure that what we think needs to be coded is actually meeting the requirements is worth it, because you save way more time and money downstream on development changes.
And I think this was one of our secret sauces in the project, I would say.
Definitely.
One more contributor. Okay.
You mentioned at the beginning, now that you have the infrastructure for Fiori, that there are other mobile apps that you want to take advantage of.
Yes.
So there's a catalog now of.
Great question. I know SAP offers a whole slew of Fiori apps. So the two applications right now on pilot would be safety observations. That was really a part of the custom development team from SAP that met Edison specific needs. The other application is the timesheet entry application. That is plain vanilla, out of the box, as part of SAP's offerings in the Fiori marketplace. I believe SAP offers hundreds of apps. Out of the catalog of about 100 or so that we've identified at Edison, I'd say it's a mix of items that we can use as out of the box, things that we can use as out of the box and then tweak slightly, or things that we really need to start from scratch because there is no Fiori offering, or the Fiori offering doesn't meet exactly what we need.
The other thing that I want to make sure you walk away with is that to build an app like that, you do not need to be on HANA or S4HANA. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You can be on an ERP system, like a ECC6 system, and you can enable a Fiori app just like that.
Yeah. And for us at Edison, and I can't speak to whether this is standard or whether others use the same type of an architectural model, EHSM was installed on our ECC servers, right? So it's on ECC 6.0 Enhanced Pack 5. That's where EHSM 3.0 exists. That's where our configuration of core EHSM is done. When somebody reports the safety observation on Fiori, it flows all the way into our ECC system, and that's where you would then go and interact with the incident itself. We have a separate server for the gateway. That is a separate op stack specifically required for us to enable external-facing Fiori apps, so that if I'm on my mobile device on AT&T or Verizon's network right now, I don't have to be on VPN in order to access this page. Whereas if I tried to launch it directly from EHSM, it's behind a firewall, and I have to be on VPN, and I couldn't get to it from a mobile device. Any other questions before we dive into the demo? All right, so everybody keep your fingers crossed, hold your breath, whatever it takes. Because let's hope this actually works. All right. I'm going to refresh it just to make sure I have it logged out. But I'm going to show this to you on our desktop. That's interesting.
This is really interesting.
All right, can everyone hear me? All right, so let's see if this works. I am on VPN, so it might take a couple seconds.
And does anybody know what Fiori means? It's an Italian word. It stands for. You have seen it there, flower.
I learned something new today.
Great.
All right, so what you can see here is I'm obviously on a desktop. This is the exact same look and feel if I were on an iPad, a tablet, a phone, or whatnot. I can expand this and you can see it's going to be responsive to the size of the screen, and it's going to be agnostic to whatever OS or device I'm running. So in this case, I'm going to shrink it so that you kind of get a better look and feel for what it would look like on a phone. Since I did log in, it automatically identifies that I'm the observer, right? Single sign-on captures my information, and great. I have a 5-step process. I don't have to worry about step 1. Now, in theory, I could submit an observation for somebody else. We're trying to encourage everyone to submit their own observations, but just in case there's somebody that maybe happened out in the field, they didn't have service on their device, they might ask somebody to report it on their behalf. You can actually click into this and change it. So now that I know that I'm the observer, I'm actually going to come in here and I don't know if anybody else has noticed, I've seen a lot of people at SAP Fiori so far walking around the showroom floor straight down at their phones. Right? A lot of hazards. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of booths, there's a lot of plugs in the socket. So
Who does that, right?
Really safe thing. So here under Observe, I have 3 options. I can go into our HR system and choose a personnel number. This is connected again. It's all connected in Ingo screenshots or slides. You saw that it was connected into our ECC system. We use SAP HR, so I can actually go search in our HR system for the exact employee. If I have a contractor at an Edison facility or maybe at a place like this that doesn't have a personnel number, I can actually click this button and it's going to give me the ability to type in first name, last name, company, and the operating unit that they're working for. Or if I really want to, I don't know the person, or for whatever reason I'm not comfortable with identifying who the person is, I can actually click this anonymous button. This was something that we had a lot of conversations about. We really want to encourage our teams to be able to identify not only themselves, but also the person that they had the conversation with, because that's the only way we're really going to change the culture. That might take some time for people to get to that comfort level. So what we did here is if you change it to anonymous, it truly will come through as anonymous. There is no tracking for who this person was. You can even change the reporting person to anonymous if you don't want to say Doug Scioli was the one that actually had the conversation. If you do that, because you have to specify the user ID that created the incident record, we actually use just a system ID that enables the record to be created so that there is no time back to my ID whatsoever. So in this case, I'm going to come back and I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to search for Don Neal. Let's see if this actually works.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I hate to ask this in an SAP conference, but is there, or do you have any experience connecting to a non-SAP HR system?
For example,
Like
PeopleSoft.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have that yet at this point. But I'm curious because
I
another
haven't.
company that is interested in my company of interest is using PeopleSoft.
I have no personal experience,
Yeah, okay.
but I could find out.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I'm assuming I know not everybody uses SAP's HR system, but is there any experience? This looks so good, but it would be nice to be able to link to another HR system.
Yes, the importance to use the SAP HR system is that the native application needs to have this record.
Yeah.
They need to know who it is. So you could probably link it in from, so. And there's probably a way to do it.
Yes, but it's not standard.
And now
There's
I'm
no
designing.
standard.
That's the architect mind coming out.
There's no standard way to attach to another system at this point. That's all we're looking for.
SuccessFactors is, well, it is SAP, but
Right.
that
Oh, I
would
know.
be something you could attach to.
It's custom. Okay.
Just as a quick question,
Yep.
how many employees do you have on your list?
We have about 13,000 active employees and another 8,000 contractors currently today active in our SAP HR system. That was something that we were able to do because all of our separated employees and contractors that are no longer active, we configured the system so that you only show those that have active personnel records today.
So you're basically using the lookup to try to start the picks?
Yes, absolutely. So it did come up again. I'm on VPN on SAP Fiori's connection, which is never the greatest. And so I was able to find Don. It also brings up their title, so you can confirm if I've got 10 John Smiths, which one am I referring to? Well, in this case, Don Neal, Director of Corporate Environmental Services at SCE. You can also identify more than one person. Right? We didn't limit ourselves to just a single person-to-person conversation. If I'm a supervisor and I have a team of 5 people and I realize that they're doing something that needs an opportunity for improvement, or maybe they're doing something really well, they're all communicating really well with each other as part of their safety tailboard before they start a project, I can identify every single one of those by continuing to add in this plus button. So in this case, I've completed step 1. Step 2 is done. Now I have to specify location and time. So here, this is again connected to the SAP EAM system where we have all of our real estate facilities configured. So I was able to select all of those functional locations out of our EAM system, bring it in, and this is where you see the 1,000 facilities.
Can you search for GO?
I can try, and well, we have other things that start with GO, but not the general office. So in this case, I'm actually going to say, you know what, the observation I'm going to capture is when Don and I got here this morning, we walked down the stairs and I said, hey Don, where are we going this morning? He's like, oh, we're going to go over to the 11 o'clock session. Well, where is it? Well, I don't know. So instead of him walking while looking at his phone, he got off the escalator, moved off to the side, and looked at his phone before he started walking. So in this case, I'm going to choose a non-Edison facility, and I'm going to say Sapphire Conference in Orlando. Now I can specify the date of the observation and time. I can change the time zone. Just going to make it easy. If it was 11 a.m. here, I'll just say it was, call it 8:30 today, Pacific time zone. All right. I'm already done with 3 out of my 5 steps, right? So this is going pretty quick, and even with us rambling away over here, it's only taking us a couple of minutes. So now, observation details. So this is where what Ingo was talking about is I'm going to choose which category that I am going to capture that we had a conversation about. So in this case, here are all the different conversation topics that you can have. Well, for a conversation about walking and texting, that's really a situational awareness item, right? So I'm going to go ahead and choose situational awareness. And we have a variety of questions. You don't have to answer all of them. Like, they don't have to answer any of them. You have to answer at least one question as part of any of these observation categories. So on this one, maintained eyes on phone. I'm going to say yes, Don did, right? Edison employee stopped to look at phone and did not walk while distracted, right? I don't have to type in a comment if I do exceeds or meets expectations, but if I choose OI, which stands for opportunity for improvement, you will be forced to enter in a comment because that's the only way that we're going to be able to take corrective action and follow up with the employee. So I can also say, okay, maintain line of sight. No, it's probably not anything that we're talking about. Aware of hazardous surfaces of terrain. This is really for our field workers, right? I mean, sure, this strip that's covering the wire, I guess, is hazardous in nature, but it's not really what the intention is here. Aware of pinch points. Did not work while distracted, used error prevention tools, demonstrated knowledge, right? So here are all the different types of questions that we've configured into the application. I'm only going to answer that one for the demo purpose.
And as Doug said, we configured those. So we used management of change, we took some functionality from there, and we embedded it into the safety observations. And if you change a question, here it will automatically come through.
I think that was a key point. I didn't realize that we actually got to that point. I was like, oh man, when we went live, Don's team already asked to start changing questions. I'm like, oh man, we're gonna have to make this change in 3 different places. Nope, you make the change one time, takes 5 minutes, and it flows all the way into the Fiori application. Works really seamlessly. So again, if I wanted to talk about multiple types of observations or multiple types of questions, I could add more categories. But again, for demo purposes, I'm just gonna choose the one for situational awareness. Now I'm just left with one more step before I hit submit. So if I had any additional comments, I can do that. Corrective action required, I could say yes. In this case, it's really no, because Don was doing the right thing. But let's say he was walking while texting. Corrective action was required, and I should have been able to address it by saying yes. What steps did I take? Well, I told him to stop walking while texting. Fortunately, I didn't have to have that conversation with my director, so that's always a good thing. So in this case, I'm going to come back and say, this is no. I can also say recognition recommended. For something like walking while texting, that's part of our policy. We should be maintaining situational awareness. It's not really something worth recognition. But if something went above and beyond from a safety perspective, I can mark this as yes. And it has an email workflow behind it so that it's going to remind you to go into our safety recognition system to acknowledge that the employee did something correct. And then finally, I can also attach a file. This is really useful when you have a phone. If you want to take a picture, it uses the native app on your phone. You can take the picture, attaches it, and it actually stores it in our ECC system. So in this case, I don't have to really answer anything else. I'm now done. I'm going to submit. Again, I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. It usually takes about 5 seconds on a mobile device. So that's really the end of the presentation. At the end, you get a check mark, and then within probably 5 minutes, I'll have an email in my inbox saying, thank you for successfully submitting your safety observation. And then if I did select yes on recognize employee, then it would have also sent me that email as a reminder to recognize the individual for safe behavior.
Very cool.
Any questions? What are we doing on time? Got about 10 minutes left.
10 minutes left.
I do want to follow up. I'm going to briefly come back into this, so give me a second. I do have screenshots captured in here. In case you want to download the presentation and refer back to them. So I'm going to kind of walk through each one of these and get to the end. So once I've submitted the safety observation and the corporate safety organization wants to follow up on something, they can actually come into, now I'm in EHSM, and we call this the Incident Management Console. So this is really restricted to our safety specialists across the company that will then interact with that transaction once it's been created by the Fiori app. Here I can go ahead and search by incident ID, incident type, organization, date, whatever it is. In this case, I went ahead and selected, search by a specific incident ID, type it into the field, select it, and now this is your actual incident record itself, right? So you can see all the different tabs, basic information, people, assets, investigation, and so forth. Depending on the severity or the actual details of the safety observation, the safety organization may actually want to go through and select what the root cause was. So what we call trend codes, right? What were the root cause, trend codes, cause codes, so that we can really start to identify where we need to target our safety programs as we move forward. For example, if we have a lot of safety programs focusing on holding a handrail while walking up and down the stairs, when we start looking at these trend codes and we identify that's really not a problem, we shouldn't be spending our time and money on that kind of a program. Instead, we need to make sure people are looking while walking and not at their phone. Because that's where we start to have a lot of incidents so far that we've been seeing over the last few months. All right. And then this is something else. If I do have corrective actions that result, I could go ahead and say, corrective action is a training program, communications, whatever it might be. This is where I can go into the investigation tab, document my corrective and preventative actions so that I can ensure that those things are completely followed through. Once again, I'm connected to the HR system. So in this case, the individual that's assigned Teresa down at the bottom, within 5 days of this task becoming overdue, she'll get an email reminder, as will her boss. At the point that it becomes overdue, she, her boss, and her boss's boss get an email reminder that now something is overdue. That really starts to motivate people to get their tasks completed on time. And then one more screenshot before I hand it over to Inga to wrap up here. Now that we have all this information, what do we do with it? Well, this is the safety dashboard that we've now been able to create. And this shows a simplistic single pane of glass for everything related to safety. We have a similar item for environmental incidents, for clearances, for hazard waste management, for compliance activities, and so forth. So you can see everything from injury counts to OSHA rates, where the injuries are coming from, and now our leading indicators. And you can see I took the screenshot a few weeks ago. We had 0 on our TBD on safety observations. Well, it's not truly giving you a good picture because we weren't capturing safety observations in EHS up until this week. Now this is going to start to get populated, so now Don and all of our management team across all of Southern California Edison can start getting access to this information to see what decisions we need to make. Any questions? Yes?
On your dashboard, is it drilled down?
Not yet, but it will be. And so that's a current enhancement that we're working on. So if I want to click on total injuries of 200, click on the button, it will launch a BW report that will give me the details of all 200 of those incidents, assuming I have access. This we can demonstrate to all of our employees across the company because it doesn't give you any confidential information. And frankly, this is part of our messaging that we want to get out to our staff is we still have 200 people, in this example, getting injured, right? That's 200 more people than we want to have injured. And so it starts to deliver a message that is really going to hit home. But if I start clicking into the details of these 200, it could be confidential in nature, right? Stress claims, workers' compensation type claims. And so the BW report itself is restricted in nature. That doesn't mean I'm going to change this. I'm going to allow people to click on it, and then I'm using the underlying authorizations within BW and role assignments to make sure I have access. All right.
All right.
So now I'll pass it to you.
All right. Anybody who likes triathlon? Triathlon. So the next 3 slides are inspired by that: swim, bike, and run. So in case you're wondering how we came up with that, we both like triathlon. Well, just like in swimming, it looks so easy. When the Olympic athletes swim, it can look that easy in the SAP world too, if you have the right skills, if you hire the right people. And that's why we decided to hire the custom development team at SAP to help us with that, because they do this every day. So that's the first key takeaway for this presentation.
I'll add on briefly.
Sure.
It's not just about the technical folks, right? It's also making sure you have the right decision makers and folks that are really knowledgeable about safety and environmental practices that you want at the table in order to truly move forward with the right solution. So it's a combination of your IT staff and your business functional expertise that you want to have at the table.
Yes, so it's not only the skills. Yeah, good point. Number 2, we talked about this one team, this idea of bringing this team together. And it's one thing to understand it intellectually, and one team, you hear this in many presentations. But it's another thing to really put it into action. I think we did a really good job of doing that with great leadership that we had on the customer and on the SAP side, and then also the technical teams, how they work together.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest compliments I've got as I've done quite a few of these presentations over the past few years is I am typically up here presenting with my counterpart, Don's organization. And we've had a lot of people come up to us and say, I can't tell who's IT and who's the business, because we start to speak each other's languages, and it's that partnership that really starts to act as one team that makes us successful.
Yeah. Didn't we give a winner prize? Just Terry Roberts. Yeah. So very cool stuff. So the last one is, running simple is very powerful, and to hear this running simple all over. But you have seen how simple this Fiori screen looks, as opposed to this SAP screen on the left-hand side. And what this does is now you can involve thousands of people to help you to understand what's going on at the bottom of this pyramid, and really shed light on that. And hopefully down the road you will grow the safety culture and reduce what's happening at the top of the pyramid. So with that, those were our 3 key learnings, and thank you very much for coming.